Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a really critical topic for basically any organization out there, privileged access management. You'll often hear it called PAM.
Right.
We've got this great source document, Key Policies Privileged Access Management.pdf, and we're going to pull out the essential insights. It really lays out a kind of blueprint for securing, well, the most sensitive stuff in a digital setup.
It really does. And PAM, at its heart, it's more than just, another piece of software. It's a whole process.
Yeah.
It's designed to lock down those really powerful accounts, the keys to the kingdom, and protect organizations from some pretty nasty cyber threats.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fundamental for compliance, definitely helps reduce risk, and just generally boosts your overall security.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack the 14 key PAM policies that are detailed in this document. We want to take what might look like dense security language and make it, well, actionable and understandable for you listening.
Yeah, make it practical.
Okay, let's unpack this thing and see what really goes into building a digital fortress.
Let's do it.
So we're starting with the basics, right? The core controls. First up, least privilege policy. We hear this phrase all the time, give only what's necessary. Why is that specific idea so foundational?
Well, it's foundational because it directly shrinks your attack surface.
Yeah.
I mean, drastically.
Yeah.
This policy basically says limit user access strictly to the privileges they need for their actual job, nothing more.
Okay.
And things like role-based access control, or RBAC, that's how you enforce it effectively. You tie privileges directly to roles. By doing that, you limit the potential damage if an account gets compromised. It contains the blast radius right from the start.
Contain the damage. Okay, so once you've sort of defined who gets what access, the next big challenge is figuring out what privileged accounts you actually have. That brings us to policy 2. Privileged account discovery and inventory. I imagine even for pros, finding all these accounts is tough.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant challenge. And that's exactly why this policy is so vital. It mandates a continuous process. You have to constantly identify and then maintain a full inventory of all privileged accounts.
All of them? Wow.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about, human admins. This includes service accounts, application accounts, scripts with privileges, the non-human identities too. It's got to be a living inventory, regularly updated, audited, to make sure nothing slips through the cracks.
Okay, that makes sense. You find the accounts. Then you need to manage the actual credentials, the passwords, the keys themselves. Policy 3, privileged credential management.
Exactly. This one's all about enforcing strong password rules complexity, making sure they're unique. But the really critical part is automatic rotation for these privileged accounts.
Automatic rotation.
Yes. And what's fascinating here, or maybe revolutionary is a better word, is how automation takes the human error out of something so critical. People are, well, not great at managing countless complex passwords and changing them regularly.
Tell me about it.
Right. So automation makes this rotation invisible, seamless. It turns what used to be a huge compliance headache into this strong dynamic barrier. It basically kills the risk of static old passwords being compromised. And of course, these credentials aren't just lying around. They're stored securely in a password vault.
Got it. And adding another layer on top, something most people listening probably use daily now, multi-factor authentication policy, policy 4.
Yes, MFA.
Yeah.
This policy makes it mandatory for all privileged account access. No exceptions. It's a huge barrier against unauthorized logins. But it also often includes something called adaptive authentication for riskier situations.
Adaptive, how does that work?
Well, the system kind of learns your usual devices, maybe locations, login times. So if an access attempt looks weird, like it's coming from a totally new country at 3 a.m., it intelligently steps up the authentication, maybe asks for another factor or flags it. It catches anomalies that basic MFA might miss.
Interesting. Okay, so we have these controls in place. Now, how do we actually watch what's happening? Policy 5, session monitoring and recording sounds like the security camera for these privileged activities.
That's a really good way to put it. It's essential for accountability, for forensics if something does go wrong.
Yeah.
This policy mandates recording and, crucially, actively monitoring all privileged sessions.
Actively monitor.
Yeah, it's not just about having recordings stored away somewhere. It's about setting up real-time alerts for suspicious actions happening during a session. If you connect this to the bigger picture, it's about actively detecting potential threats as they're happening, not just cleaning up afterwards.
Right, proactive detection. Now, speaking of dynamic stuff, Policy 6 gets really interesting. Just-in-time, or JIT, access policy. This sounds like it completely changes the old way of just giving people permanent admin rights.
Oh, JIT access is a genuine game changer. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Instead of someone having, say, admin rights all the time, this policy means privileged access is granted only when it's needed and only for a limited time.
Just for that specific task.
Exactly. And the automation part is key here, too. Provisioning the access quickly when requested and then automatically revoking it as soon as the task is done or the time expires. It drastically shrinks that window of opportunity for an attacker to exploit an active, high-privilege session.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, but what about access from outside? Vendors, third parties, that seems like a big risk area. Policy 7, third-party and vendor access policy. How do you manage that risk beyond your own walls?
That's a huge focus. This policy is about being really strict with restricting and monitoring any third-party access to critical systems. You absolutely have to. It often means requiring vendors to use very specific secure methods, maybe through a PAM gateway, and often using temporary credentials that expire quickly.
Temporary credentials for vendors, too.
Definitely, because let's be honest, third parties are often a way in for attackers if that access isn't super tightly controlled and watched. It's about making sure your security standards apply to your partners, too.
Right, extending the perimeter. Okay, policy 8. Privileged access review. Sounds like regular checkups, right? Making sure access granted previously is still actually needed.
Precisely. Continuous validation. This policy mandates doing periodic, thorough reviews. You have to verify that only the right people still have privileged access and that the level of access is still appropriate for their current job. It's not a one-off.
And what happens if it's not needed anymore?
That's where automated access revocation comes in. The policy should ensure that if an account is inactive for a while, or the review shows the access isn't justified anymore, it gets removed automatically, proactively closing those doors.
Good point. Then policy 9, privilege of access approval. This tackles the who gets to approve this question.
Yeah.
Adds a layer of human judgment.
Yes, a critical layer of accountability. This policy requires formal approval, usually from a manager or the system owner, before any privileged access is granted. Someone has to sign off on it. And crucially, you need a solid audit trail of all these requests and approvals. Who asked, who approved, when, why it all needs to be logged and immutable.
Which leads nicely into policy 10, privilege access logging and audit policy, the record-keeping piece that underpins a lot of this.
Absolutely essential. This policy pushes for detailed logging of everything related to privileged activity, what commands were run, what systems were accessed, everything. This detail is vital for compliance audits, but also incredibly important for incident response.
And how do you make sense of all those logs?
That's where integration with SIEM tools comes in, security information and event management. You feed these detailed PAM logs into your SIEM, and it can correlate them with other security events across your network. That's how you spot the subtle patterns that might indicate a real attack in progress in real time.
Got it. SIEM integration is key. Okay, now we shift gears a bit, looking at more specific situations. Policy 11, emergency and break glass access. The in case of emergency plan. Sounds necessary, but also potentially risky.
Very necessary, and yes, needs tight controls. This policy defines exactly how emergency access works. Even in a crisis, access must be granted following strict procedures, with heavy logging and mandatory review afterwards. You typically use special temporary accounts, often called break glass accounts, that have time limits.
So they don't just stay active forever.
Definitely not. The whole point is rapid response capability. But these accounts must be disabled or have their passwords immediately changed once the emergency is over. No permanent backdoors allowed.
Okay. Now, what about the other end of the life cycle? People changing roles or leaving the company. Policy 12, privileged access deprovisioning. This seems like something that could easily fall through the cracks, but with big consequences.
It falls through the cracks far too often, and the consequences can be severe.
Yeah.
This policy mandates the immediate revocation of privilege access when someone's role changes and they no longer need it, or when they leave the organization entirely. Delay here is a major source of risk insider threats. Orphaned accounts.
So how do you ensure it happens immediately?
Automation again. Automating deprovisioning linked to HR systems or identity management systems is the best way. It takes human forgetfulness out of the loop and ensures access is cut off consistently and on time. It eliminates that ghost access problem you mentioned.
Right, makes sense. Okay, policy 13 takes us away from just servers and networks to individual computers. Endpoint privilege management. Why focus PAM down at the laptop level?
Because endpoints, laptops, desktops are so often the initial entry point from attacks. Malware lands there first. This policy is about applying least privilege directly on the endpoint. Usually, the first step is removing local admin rights from regular users. That alone stops a huge amount of malware in its tracks.
But don't users sometimes need admin rights for things?
Sometimes, yes. So you also implement application control defining what software is allowed to run and privilege elevation policies. This lets a standard user temporarily get elevated rights for a specific approved task, like installing approved software, without having full admin rights all the time. It's granular control.
Okay, last one. Policy 14. Cloud Privileged Access Policy. With everything moving to the cloud or multi-cloud, how does PAM adapt? It seems way more complex.
It definitely adds complexity. This policy tackles securing privileged access across different cloud environments. AWS, Azure, GCP, maybe hybrid setups too. The key is striving for consistent policies wherever possible so you don't have wildly different rules in different places.
And how do you enforce that in the cloud?
You often need to leverage cloud-native PAM tools or PAM solutions that integrate well with cloud provider APIs. These tools understand the dynamic nature of cloud resources, things spinning up and down, and can enforce access controls effectively within those environments. It's about applying the same rigor, just adapted for the cloud model.
Wow. Okay, that was quite a tour through all 14 policies from the document, from least privilege fundamentals right up to complex cloud scenarios. It really is a comprehensive framework.
It is.
So stepping back, what this really paints is a picture of, well, a multi-layered defense system for an organization's most critical assets. Absolutely vital stuff in today's world.
Exactly. And the key thing to remember is that these policies don't work in isolation. You can't just pick one or two. They support each other, they overlap, they create this robust security posture when implemented together. It's about building that holistic defense, covering all the angles of privileged access.
Right, a holistic approach. It makes you think. As you go about your day, using your banking app, scrolling social media, shopping online, think about how these same PAM principles, like maybe least privilege or definitely MFA, might be working behind the scenes to protect your data. You never see the policies themselves, right? But they're there. Consider those silent guardians keeping your digital life secure, something to mull over.